That's
right?
exactly right.
Someone else is writing a letter to their VP to
Mm-hmm.
advocate for their peers, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're risking their job and putting it all on the line. Someone else is just saying, I don't stand for this. I'm putting in my resignation letter. And I think
Mm-hmm.
we need to be okay with the fact that everybody's form of activism is different.
Welcome to Diversity Dish, where we're dishing on everything diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice related. My name is Sedruola Maruska, and we're bridging the gap between what needs to be said and what needs to be heard. Those individual experiences that are often ignored or simply dismissed. Sometimes I'm dining alone, sometimes I'm dining with friends, and sometimes I'm dining a la carte. No matter how I'm dining, it promises to be delicious. Let's dig in. Juliette Nelson is a thought leader, entrepreneur, and published author who is passionate about empowering people to achieve the highest standards of their purpose. Having a bachelor's and master's in business administration, she is dedicated to equipping her clients with the tools to be more productive, successful, and enjoy a better quality of life. She is also a doctoral candidate in industrial and organizational psychology and aims to support organizations in achieving organizational effectiveness. Juliette is the founder and CEO of Januri, a company that equips students, professionals, and business owners with the tools and resources to be successful in the different areas of their lives. In November of 2019, Juliette authored and published Sharing My Lens, The College Experience, in which she shares some of the gems that prove to be valuable in achieving an engaging academic experience throughout college. Juliette is also the CEO of Neuralens, a wooden eyewear collection with blue light blocking solutions in each pair that celebrates individuality, self-expression, and each person's calling to be impactful, all in a pair of frames. Given her experiences, she is intentional about being an agent of motivation, inspiration, and encouragement to the world around her.
Thank you so much for returning to Diversity Dish, the award-winning podcast. I'm so excited to be able to say that now. And today, my guest is Juliette Nelson. Hey, Juliette, how are you?
Hello.
I
And
have to
congratulations again on
thank
being award
you.
winning.
Thank you. Now, I have to come clean. Julia and I had the bomb interview like about a month ago. And what happened? Sister girl here forgot to hit record. So Julia is actually back for take two. And I really think that you're going to get a lot more. I mean, we really talked about a lot before, but I think you're gonna get a lot more because Julia and I have like we've got this vibe now. We've got this thing going, this love affair. So
Mm-hmm.
it's gonna
So
be
much in
fire.
common.
So much in common. But before we get into all of that, I want you to tell people what it is that you are most passionate about right now.
And it could have been the same thing last month or the month before. Honestly, I'm most passionate about being kind to myself and being kind to others.
Yeah.
To this week, today, this month, actually, there's been a lot of death this year from my home church. I think, and I think I've lost count, but I stopped counting at 10 people,
Oh.
including one of my children's choir members from back home, who passed away with a seizure suddenly. And so it's so important to just be kind to yourself, show yourself grace and compassion, and also be kind to others. Life is so short. And so words of kindness, being able to speak life into people and speak life into yourself is so important. I know last month was even Suicide Awareness Month, and losing my best friend to suicide a few years ago, that was something that was also on my mind. You know what I mean? Like being kind to yourself. I think we always tell people who go through depression and so on and so forth, or who are experiencing suicidal thoughts, think about your mom, your dad, your spouse, your children, people at work, your friends. But remove all of those people. They have themselves to live for, right? And that's just enough. And I think that also goes back into that theme of being kind to yourself and being kind to others. And I know for myself especially, you know, I found myself struggling to grieve because literally there was a funeral every week. And you know, you can't call in my church community, it's hard to call someone without saying, hey, guess what, with good news, even, because they're going to be like, wait, did something happen? And so, you know, I've had to remind myself that it's okay to take a step back. It's okay to take a pause. It's okay to tell someone I'm not in the headspace right now. It's very much okay to do that. So yeah, that's really what I'm passionate about doing today, this month, this week, right now.
This week, right now. It could change.
Right,
like
right.
Everybody can't see you, and the image that they're gonna see of you is with your beautiful red, I think it's like a burgundy-ish hair, but right now a magenta color was so beautiful. I loved it. But then now, as you're sitting with me, you are wearing blue hair, which looks awesome.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yes. And so, you know, when you're talking about being kind to yourself right now, here, and you know what you're passionate about right now, that changes all the time. It changes for all of us all the time.
Absolutely.
And we have to allow ourselves to evolve in that way.
Yeah.
Right. We
absolutely.
have to allow ourselves. I mean, I know that I could say that I was kind to myself pre-cancer, but I really know that I listen more to myself now post-cancer than I did before. I trust myself more. And I think that that's something that we as women of color, Black women, we don't always trust ourselves because we've been gaslighted so much. We can get into that.
Too much. I mean, I suffer chronic illness. I've never, and I celebrate you for being a cancer survivor, if that's what I'm understanding.
Yes, thank you.
I absolutely celebrate you. And I've never had cancer, thank God. I suffer chronic illness though, and like yourself, it's really you feeling symptoms. And I think since I was a teenager, especially dealing with the impacts of suffering chronic anemia, where I was constantly like completely weak, passing out, and so on and so forth. There were times where and I've had to really teach myself not to do that, but I would look in the mirror and say, you are not feeling what you think you're feeling. And I'm saying I would have debilitating migraines that would impair my speech. Sometimes I can't move. I can't see. Like, and this has been going on decades, but I was at a point for a very long time, I would look myself in the mirror and say, you're not experiencing what you're experiencing, even with other symptoms of being in horrible pain, like debilitating, paralyzing pain. Wow. I'm still telling myself, you are not feeling what you're feeling. Go and direct this choir. Go and show up to work. Go and it's like, no, your body needs a break.
Yes.
And it was sometimes getting to the point when my body shut down. I was out of commission for months.
Right.
Out of commission for months. It was even to a point, I remember at one point, I'd gone to the asthma allergy doctor because I was on a nebulizer almost every day for at least a month. And they did like this kind of test, and they said that my lungs were really functioning at maybe 65% of what it should be functioning at.
Wow.
So I really had to be like, all right, is it worth me overdoing it and never listening to my body, right? Instead of just saying, hey, you have a little headache, it's okay. Because at a point, I remember people saying, hey, if you need a break, take a break. And in my head, I was like, if I need to take a break, I need to take a break every day. I need to take a nap every day. I'm not feeling well most of the time, but I have to figure out a way to function. But, you know, I think, you know, especially as I've gotten older, especially with COVID, especially just seeing the world around you too, right? And how people process information and seeing how people are either being kind to themselves or not being kind to themselves. I think when you're able to see yourself in someone as well and see how I don't want to call it crazy, but how bad it is for you to really not be kind to your body and kind to your spirit and your mental and your emotional and your spiritual. You know, you see how damaging it is. and you really have to go through this process of unlearning it. So
yeah,
anyway,
you're
I can
right.
definitely relate to that.
You can't. Yes, it's so true. We have to go through a process of unlearning it. You know, since cancer, I've been thrown into menopause because of my drugs and things like that. But when I was younger, when I first got my period, and I told my mom, I was like, Mom, oh, I'm having cramps. And my mom said, you're not sick. Go to school. And do you know that I would tell myself that for years later, years to come, when I was having pain, I was having heavy periods, I was weak, just like you said, I would become anemic around that time. So I would have the headaches, and I would have the nausea, and I would have the weakness, and I would still, like you said, I would say to myself, girl, you are not sick. Go to work.
And go forth and prosper.
Go. Yes.
It's so unhealthy.
It's so unhealthy.
It is so unhealthy.
And it's, you know, and your body is trying to talk to you. Your body sometimes gets to the point where it's yelling at you. It's like, you need to stop. And you're saying, go, go, go. And I think one of the reasons is because we live in this society that actually glorifies that go, go, go. You get prizes for never having been late or never having been absent.
Taking a day off.
Right. You know, oh,
it's so
they
sad.
Worked here for 35 years and never took a day off. I'm like, you know how dumb that is? I mean, that's because they're going to go into retirement and just drop. And that's going to be it.
And I've even learned, you know, where I work for the government. And I've even learned that sometimes for some employees, when they're going in for promotion or they're going in for a new job, sometimes the hiring manager may look at their the sick time they take, scheduled or unscheduled. And if there's another candidate that didn't take as much sick time, scheduled or unscheduled, they may have a leg up on the person who did.
Yes.
And in my head, I was like, that is crazy. It's wild to me. You know, I've had conversations even with my peers working in diversity, equity, and inclusion, you know, about a mental health day, right? And the debate as to whether it should be like a vacation, what you take out of your vacation time, or whether it should be sick time. But it's like, you're taking care of your health. Why is this even a debate as to the fact that something is wrong with me, right? If I need a break, and I've had to learn to do that, to be like, okay, I'm going to take a sick day, and it's going to be to take a break. And for some people, that take a break means I need to go to the spa and get a massage. And that's how I'm taking care of my mental. That might be staying at home and spending the day in bed. That might be going for a walk, walking around the city, or whatever the case may be. But, you know, we're in this society where it's like, go, 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 go. And that takes away from us being kind to ourselves. And I don't know if you're aware of that, but we are currently not in the Great Recession, not in the Great Depression, and I'm probably sure we still are, but we are in the Great Resignation.
Yeah.
According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, there is a mass exodus out of the workplace, a mass exodus. And I'm like, it is that bad that some people are not even pressed about the bills that they're going to be left with if they don't have a job. They're kind of like, screw you and your job, and this whatever you think I'm gonna do, and these expectations. You know, there's nothing wrong with the 9 to 5, but there's everything wrong with those who are at the 9 to 5 that think that they're robots working for them. It's wild.
Yes, it is so wild. And it's true. I think people have looked around. They had a moment where they could actually slow down and look around, and they went, oh no, this is not working out. What am I going to do next? I'm going to go learn something new. I'm going to apprentice with something new. I'm going to figure out what my passions are. I'm going to walk away from this and I'm going to give myself some space and some grace. I'm going to be
Right.
kind
Right.
to myself so that I can hear what needs to be heard and do
Right.
what needs to be done so that I can
Yep.
actually maybe go make more money and not feel like I'm running on this treadmill and making,
Right.
you know, $4 an hour, can't pay the bills properly.
Absolutely. Right.
Go over here. Yeah, absolutely. It's a real thing. And I think that employers are freaking out, but they haven't been treating
They're
their
not
people.
adjusting.
They haven't been treating their people right.
They haven't. And I remember getting called by an organization saying, hey, we found your resume on LinkedIn and we would love to call you in, et cetera, et cetera. And one of the questions I was like, what is your COVID policy? And I tell people, when you go in for a job, you are interviewing them as well. Ask questions. What are the benefits like? What is your leave and what is your leave policy? You know, how many sick days do we get? You know, what's the flexibility? And I remember asking, and they started to stutter. They were like, I can look into that. I said, yeah, because as you know, COVID is alive and well. And I don't see when it's going, but it's alive and well. So let's talk about that COVID policy and how you intend to protect me if I am to accept the position from your organization.
Right.
Needless to say, I didn't hear back from them. I don't know if it's because of that question or because, you know, they found somebody else, but I was okay with that.
Right.
You know, it's so important for, you know, and I tell my clients this, it's not just you who needs the job needs you. Right. That's why they're interviewing you. Yep. And so you need to make sure that the conditions are right for you to work in. And I always say this, you need a safe space for you to evolve, for you to grow. If it's too toxic, if it's too chaotic, and that doesn't work for you, check up the deuces. It's okay. You'll find something else. You'll find something else.
Yeah, it's true. I think that people tend to forget. So I'm doing a group coaching, putting together a group coaching program right now where I want to help individuals understand the power that they hold to affect social change. And the reason I did that is because we forget that corporations, businesses, institutions, all of them are made up of people. And when the people begin to make decisions that are good and that affirm and that kind of support the other people that work within the organization, things will change. But it takes individuals. You know, we look at this whole social justice, equity, inclusion thing, and we think, oh my gosh, it's so big. There's so much that needs to be done. I can't do anything, so I don't do anything. But the truth of the matter is, yes, it is huge. Yes, we're not going to fix all of this in our lifetime right now because it didn't only happen within our lifetime. But there have to be people who are willing to take the steps in tell me what your industry is. I'll tell you how it is affected by racism. All of them. Right. And so you can't tell me that you're in any industry, any business, or anything that is not affected by racism. It is. You need to figure out how it is and how you can make a difference there. And that's what I want.
It's impacted by some kind of ism.
Hey, thanks for listening. My name is Sedruola Maruska, and I help entrepreneurs and small businesses go from mediocre to magnificent by transforming their cultures to be more equitable and inclusive. To find out how we can work together, go to diversitydish.com, where you'll find my consulting, coaching, and speaker information. diversitydish.com. I look forward to working with you.
Ism. So
some kind of ism.
Right. And so each one of us has the power to make a difference. We just have to own that power. We have to know what our strengths are and what our passions are. Whatever your passion is, you can work within there to affect change. Right. So
and I want to add to that. And I'm sorry to cut you off, but I think it's also worth noting that everyone's activism isn't the same.
That's right.
And I think especially, I know when George Floyd passed away, people were calling on celebrities, people were calling on, this person and this and that person. And it's not to say that they don't have a significant influence, right? But we also have to understand, again, you might be in the front lines at a protest.
Yeah.
For me, I am teaching children and empowering them with the knowledge to be able to make change.
That's exactly right.
Someone else is writing a letter to their VP to advocate for their peers, right? They're risking their job and putting it all on the line. Someone else is just saying, I don't stand for this. I'm putting in my resignation letter. And I think we need to be okay with the fact that everybody's form of activism is different. And that also goes into being kind to yourself and being kind to others, because everything is coming with a risk, a level of risk. So you have to see how you feel. You can make the best impact, and it can bring more of a sense of purpose and meaning to your life, where that impact is now more meaningful for you and for those around you.
Yes, absolutely. And that's why in this group, I say, I want you to figure out what your strengths are, figure out what you do really well that you think is not even, you do it so easily and you do it so well. And it comes to you so naturally. It is what you do that you don't even think that it's valuable, but it is, because not everybody can do it the way that you do. And then take that passion that you have and use it right there, right wherever it is. Are you a music teacher?
Absolutely.
I mean, I don't care what you are. Do you love to get things clean? So you have a cleaning business, you can use it right there. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Whatever it is, but you have to really identify what your strengths are and how they intersect with your passion, and how that can move forward the work of social justice, which means that we are all capable, all of us, in different ways to do it. So
absolutely, I completely agree.
I love that that's your passion, being kind. And being kind, this is another thing I want to say. Being kind is not the same as being nice. And
they say that people from New York are not nice, but we are kind.
We are.
I'll tell you that much.
Look.
You from New York too, sis?
Yes. I think we talked about this.
I knew you were Seventh-day Adventist. I knew you lived in. Wait, hold up. It's too many similarities here.
We are so connected.
We need to do, what is that? The 23andMe. What is that? The genealogy.
The genealogy to see. Oh, girl, don't even, because
they say Haitians are all related.
They're all related.
Yeah.
So Juliette and I are both
I always
Haitian.
Get worried about marrying. Right. I always get worried about marrying a Haitian and I can't make this up. I have, and this is not the first occurrence, but I have two cousins of mine. One of them is my father's cousin on his grandmother's side. The other is my father's cousin on my grandfather's side.
Yeah.
And they never knew that until they met my dad, and they were like, "Hey, cuz," and they're looking at each other like, "Wait, yeah." I'm telling you. But all to say, yes, we're both from New York.
Yes, I was born in Queens, grew up mostly in Queens. So yes.
And they come for us. They really come for us. They will tell us that we are not nice, but we are kind.
I tell people that all the time. I'm like, you may not think, I'm like, you try walking past over 100,000 or whatever number of people every single day and see if you're not going to be in your own little bubble so that you can protect that energy, because it takes energy to every time you say hi, every time you make eye contact and you smile, there's a certain amount of energy that is expended. People don't realize that. So if you're walking, or if you're in a city that is that dense with people, you have to be in your own space. But just step to a New Yorker and say, "Excuse me." They'll be out of their space and be like, "Yes, how can I help you?" I took my kids to New York a couple of years ago during their April break. And my son, we're out in the middle of nowhere. So my son is very used to that. And he's always like, "I don't like the city so much. I don't like the city so much." So we go to New York, and I'm like, I'm thinking, I really want him to love the city. I want him to love the city.
Right.
Oh, you know, the city, it's so busy, it stinks, it's this, it's that, it's the other.
Right.
So anyway, so we're going through during the week, the few days that we're there. I haven't been in the city for a while, so I have to ask people questions. So I've gone to someone and say, hey, excuse me, could you show me? And they're like, yeah. And they say, here, let me just take you. And they walk us over to where we need to go. And then we get on, the train, and someone says, here, you can take my seat. And they get up for me.
Yeah.
And this is not a super full train. And mind you, I don't look like I need to take a seat, but it was just kind of them to do that. He was like, oh, you're here with 2 kids, here, just take my seat. And I was like, okay, thank you. And my son was processing all of this. And I didn't really think about it, but he was processing all of this. And then when we were leaving, he's like, you know what, Mom? The city is not so bad. I was like, I'll take it. I'll take it.
Leave it right there. It's okay. I'll take that. And he's right. I'm from upstate New York, and I know y'all from the city.
I know, I know you were from Spring Valley. We were talking about that.
From Spring Valley. And for some reason, y'all call us upstate.
It used to be upstate.
Like 30 minutes from
I know, but it really...
It is 30 minutes from the Bronx. We are not in Niagara Falls. We are not in Buffalo. It's Spring Valley. Like, literally.
Girl, you know, anything that's outside the city. Anything that's outside the city, I don't care how close.
If we have New York, this is the city, and this is the city, and this is Spring Valley. Okay, it's the Tappan Zee Bridge, and what do they call it? The Mario Cuomo Bridge now. The Tappan Zee Bridge.
I think they're trying to do
Cuomo, George Washington.
Cuomo Tappan Zee.
Something like that. But I know I grew up with it as the Tappan Zee, the GW. And the sad part, I talk to people about this, and there are different reactions. But it's White Plains that doesn't get any love. They're not upstate. They're not the city. They're just there. And a friend of mine, her family lives in that Westchester County state. She's like, we don't want to associate with y'all anyway. We were meant to stand out, okay? Why fit in when you can stand out? Right. But you all call us upstate. No, we're literally like right across the bridge. But it's interesting though. It's really interesting because one thing I think about, especially when you're looking at that southeastern part of New York, there's such a blend of so many cultures. It's really worth noting, because when you have people coming from their different cultures, I find that outside of, especially American, I'm talking like United States, I don't know how it is in Canada, but outside of the United States and maybe European cultures, I find that other cultures, even in South Korea and Haiti, there's this emphasis on the community and the group.
Yes.
There's a large emphasis on it. And when you come with that, no matter how far removed as a child of the diaspora you are, the reality is you carry those values. So yes, you might be in a hurry. You might not want to sit on customer service for more than 10 minutes. But if someone needs help, if someone needs support, I know they say Haitians, what are we? Someone we're nosy. But you're not gonna complain about that when we come for the rescue.
When we come to the rescue, because we came to the rescue in several countries. Girl,
right. When we're out here fighting everybody's wars instead of just minding our own independence. Okay?
Yes, because we could have done that.
We really could. And you know what makes me so sad? And I hate to pivot, but the issue from like a couple of weeks ago with the migrants at the border. Ooh. It's like we fought until this day. Haitians literally wave our flags in everyone's movement. Black Lives Matter, Stop Asian Hate, everyone's movement. And the silence was deafening. It was deafening when there was a whole bunch of gang violence.
Yeah.
And then the president was assassinated. And then all of a sudden you have migrants who are being like, you're not even treating them as humans.
No.
It's one thing you tell them, listen, we're not going to take you, turn around, come back. I'm sorry, you were misinformed. Okay. But the fact that the way you're inhumanely treating them, and I hate speaking about it because it frustrates me, but I was really sitting here like hundreds of years ago, we were fighting for people's freedom. We fought for people's freedom. And they can say whatever they want. You know, they talk about the whole voodoo thing and whatever. And I'm not, it's neither here nor there, but I'm like, y'all complain about the fact that we're quote unquote cursed, but pick your poison. Would you want your freedom or not? We fought this fight until this day. We fight.
It's not that we are cursed. It is that
we're not.
It's
the price we pay.
It's the price we pay because we decided that we were not going to be enslaved anymore. And that's the price we pay. Because then they were like embarrassed. Napoleon was embarrassed that he lost, that the Ile des Antilles, the jewel, right. You know, he was embarrassed that he lost it. Yeah. So then he gave, you know, Thomas Jefferson this whole swath of land so that they could. Yeah. It's so infuriating. But then you look at different flags, and I've looked at this.
Our flag is everybody's flag.
Incorporate the Haitian flag in many countries' flags, including Korea.
Yes. And I learned that a couple of years ago. We sent aid to them during the war between the North and the South.
Yes.
What was that? World War II? Yeah. Yes. We were in everybody's business.
We were like, y'all want to be free?
Being Sumun wasn't a bad thing. We're going to help you out. Being Sumun was not a bad idea during those days. It was not, if you think about it. Sumun, for those listening, Sumun is very much like you're just all up in
expression. He's like all in the business.
You just all up in somebody's Kool-Aid, okay? But really, y'all complain about the Sumun until we out here fighting for your freedom.
So we're out here and we're fighting for you to the point that you incorporate our flag into your flag. That is serious.
We were even fighting. We set up even Argentina. When we were even when we were enslaved. Though.
Yes.
Even when we were still Haitians were sent to the United States to fight for independence against Great Britain. Haitians fought in the Civil War. Haitians took in African Americans.
Yes.
And it's interesting that we were fighting for each one of these Hispanic countries because even the identity as being considered Latino or Latinx, we are considered Latino. We are by definition Latino. But I can't even count on one hand because I'm not aware of any Haitian that really identifies as Latino.
Yeah.
And I find that Haitians that I've spoken to, they don't want to be identified as Caribbean, don't identify them as West Indian, don't identify them as Latino, identify them as Haitian. That's it. I'm Haitian. And it's so sad that, you know, of course we stand out, right? But it's so sad that we're not even included in all of these buckets that we literally fit in.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Which reminds me, I need to start checking off that Latino box, if I'm being honest. I need to start checking. I'm black and I'm Latino.
I'm black and I'm Latino.
Right. This freedom ain't free. Okay. This independence ain't free. This independence, it ain't free. It ain't free. This freedom ain't free.
Right? Oh my goodness. Yes.
And I even struggle with that. I've even struggled where times I'm like, hey, I could check this box off because yes, by definition, and for me, I absolutely love culture. I love diversity. I love what makes people beautiful, no matter who they are. You know, I will wave anybody's flag, you know, and it doesn't take away from who I am as a Haitian American person. I will wave, you know, I have my two closest friends, the Jamaican and Trinidadian, and they know in May, don't tell me nothing. Don't tell me a thing. All you're gonna see is Haitian flags, okay? On January 1st, it's shumu. They know the protocol. Okay?
That's right.
To the point that I get pressed like it's January 2nd. Juliette, approach the bench. Where's my boat? You know what I mean? When August comes, right? When August comes, when it's Trinidad and Jamaica's Independence Day, I have a friend of mine, she will FaceTime me and all I'll see is a Jamaican flag in the camera. And she's like, in May, you were waving your flag, nobody told you.
That's right.
So don't say a word. And you know what? I will proudly celebrate that. I will celebrate my Hispanic family, West Indian, Caribbean, South American, Asian, whatever. I would Caucasian, European, I will celebrate everyone for who they are, as beautiful as they are.
Yes.
But I also feel like it is disheartening that when it comes to being a Haitian person, the lack of inclusion that we have. It's like we're constantly having to create our own lane in spite of all of the lanes we've created for everybody else.
Yes, absolutely.
That's disheartening.
It's like being a Black woman in America.
And you know, when it comes to, I hate to say this, but being a Black woman, I do, and I've read studies on this, Black women are possibly and could be considered the most marginalized group. Mm-hmm. Because when we fight for people's freedoms, and even being Haitian, that reminds me of that. You are fighting in everybody's cause, but you are still on the back burner. When we were fighting for suffrage, mm-hmm. you know, what was it, Susan B. Anthony and Sojourner Truth? You know, we don't even know the truths behind them probably trying to silence Sojourner. Mm-hmm. You know, probably because she was a Black woman. That's the first part of the phrase, Black. Yeah. You know, the mm-hmm. freedom for woman was more for a white woman. And yes. then when we're looking at freedom for Black people, it was the men who still, because we live in a patriarchal society or patriarchal world, and, you know, while we made a lot of advancements, that's our reality. Freedom was more for the Black men mm-hmm. than it was for the woman. This is not to take away from anyone's struggle, anyone's pain, anyone's oppression, because mm-hmm. I fully validate their lived experiences and so on and so forth. But mm-hmm. as a Black woman, that's challenging, where it's like you're constantly fighting, right? But you're still left being marginalized, right? Mm-hmm. You can, even if you wanted to say Blue Lives Matter, right? As a mm-hmm. woman, I'm pretty sure they're marginalized not only as a Black person, but also as a woman. When you come to, what is it, LGBTQ, right? Mm-hmm. You're further marginalized. Like it's just a bunch of layers being taken off. And I mm-hmm. see that even as Haitians. I won't say we're the most marginalized, but really we can fight for Latinx, but we're still Black. We're still Afro-Caribbean. Yep. We can fight for Caribbean and West Indian, but it's still Haitian, where everyone has this stigma, AIDS, voodoo, whatever it is, as if they don't got the same problems. Okay, right? Because we not gonna act. What we're not gonna do is act like slaves were only dropped in Hispaniola.
Okay.
And voodoo only came to Hispaniola, but different conversation, different day. Right. But it's like we're fighting in everyone's fight, but when you still peel off the layers.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's exactly right. And so it can become frustrating. It's just kind of like, you know, mm-hmm. well, you know what? Forget you guys. We're not going to keep beating that horse. You're just going to watch what we do. We're just going to keep rising. We have to keep rising. Mm-hmm. We have to keep doing, keep being, that's what we do. Keep overcoming, and just keep, because mm-hmm. that's in our DNA.
Right.
In our DNA.
Right. As women and as Haitians.
As women, as Black women, as Haitians, we have a lot written in that DNA.
This is what we do.
That says, all right, pick it up, keep it moving.
And I think I would say another thing. I think it's unfair sometimes for people to say, because we're going to do it anyway. We're going to rise up. We're going to overcome. But there's always this theme about, well, if you don't like it, get out, or go back to where you came from, or do your own thing.
Right.
But it's like, that doesn't take away from the fact that there's still a problem here. Yes. Right. Mm-hmm. The reality is, if I don't fit here, if I don't belong, I'm out. I'm gonna do my own thing. But at which point are we really going to address the inequities? Mm-hmm. Right.
But there is a problem.
Which point are we going to at which point are we going to discuss the elephants in the room, the problems? Are we just going to continue saying, hey, we're going to leave this and create our own lane? At which point are the people being left behind going to say, hey, there are some conversations some tough conversations that we really need to have?
Mm-hmm. They're very tough conversations. And I talk to people all the time. I say, the conversations are not hard because the information is not real or not true. It's because the information is real and true, and people don't want to to hear and own up to what now needs to be done once you know the information, right? Once you can't unknow once you've known, you can't unsee what you've seen. And so now it's like, what is your responsibility? What responsibility you're going to take for this? And no one wants to take the responsibility for it. They don't want to say, oh, okay, I know, I realize, now I'm going to do blank. And, you know, another thing is we know many marginalized communities know and have the generational trauma that comes through the ages. Oh yeah. We know and understand this, and we confront it, and we talk about it, and we get out in front of it. We unpack it as we can, right? Right. I think the disconnect comes when white people don't know, understand, or believe that they have any generational trauma. But you can't tell me that someone who watched a lynching does not have generational trauma and thought it was okay. Someone who participated in a lynching did not pass down some type of generational trauma. Right. Some woman who had to sit by while her husband went out and raped his enslaved women. Slave, right. And then had children with that enslaved woman. Right. That's traumatic. You cannot tell me that that is not generational trauma that comes down through the DNA, just like ours. So you have to confront your shit also. And that's what's not happening. Nobody wants to look at it. Nobody wants to talk about it. Nope. Let alone say, okay, this may be my legacy left to me. What do I do about it? And that I understand is really hard, but that's the real hard work that needs to be done. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I've seen people post about this and mention this, talking about corporal punishment for kids. I know growing up Haitian, I was spanked as a kid. Sorry, mom and dad. But, you know, I've been spanked as a kid. Oh, my goodness. Bless your heart. And I wasn't spanked a lot. It wasn't, you know, but I was spanked. When I got a spanking, it was a spanking, you know, and depending on the parent, you might have had, and this is very cultural, but you might have had some parents who spanked their kids, or some kids were spanked more than others. And for some of us, we're like, if it wasn't for that belt or that stick or that iguaz, what is that what they call it in Haiti? I would be the whip today. For others, for others, it's like, no, it's really, really had a negative impact. But you have like the modern parent, and many of them that say, as an adult, you don't even want your boss coming and yelling and hollering at you. Why would you do that to a child? Right. You see what because they're still human. And I think when it comes to that generational trauma in that same way, you really have to tap into how you would feel, right? And not only just use how you would feel to gaslight people. That's very, very important. You have to be okay with the fact that some of these experiences, for example, my experience being the child of immigrants, right? Being a woman, in addition to a myriad of things, if I'm speaking to a Caucasian woman who might have more of a level of privilege than I do, it doesn't take away from whatever her experiences are, but it's still, you know what I mean? But it doesn't mean that it invalidates what I'm going through. That's right. And I think when people can really tap into their humanness, unfortunately, we live in a world where the concept of being Black, it's been almost corrupted, right? Almost like having darker skin, having melanin, which is such a beautiful thing. It's almost like viewed as it was almost viewed as a dirty thing. Even with your Constitution, Thomas Jefferson, all of these people, our Constitution was it was written on the fact that, you know, Black people and Native Americans indigenous people were barbaric. Okay, happy Indigenous Peoples Month, or Native Americans, I think, month. And then that Black people, they could
work for our bone structure, allowed us to work for long hours in the sun, and so on and so forth. And it's permeated across generations. But if you're, for example, a white woman, and you know how painful childbirth is, right? Without epidural, what makes you think another woman, black, purple, green, blue, whatever, should go through the same amount of pain? Why is that okay?
Why is that okay?
You know the trauma you went through watching your husband, or you know the trauma you would experience watching your husband sleep with another man, right? Imagine the trauma of a woman being sexually abused and the impact that could have for generations, right? But instead, we try to kind of push those back. And again, when it's convenient, we now say, oh, well, I go through this and I go through that, or it was hundreds of years ago, and whatever the case may be. And I really think that we need to tap into our humanness and understand that everybody deserves to be regarded as a human. Not the level of humanity that Thomas Jefferson and his goons thought we had.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, because none of that was ever written for us. And we know this. We understand this because at the time, we were not even considered a full human. We were 3/5 of a human, right? And that's been passed down through your generational
very
issues,
much. And I think that we don't even realize anywhere you go. And I've mentioned this. Sometimes I'm like, the issues that we have in this country are never going to go away until you literally scratch the entire Constitution and write it over. Because remember, we've had to have all of these amendments. Because starting with the first problem, Native Americans and or indigenous people and Black folk, we were not even considered a full human. We were given all of these crazy titles. So imagine rewriting this Constitution that includes everyone. But unfortunately, because you had a group of people who were not considered human, everyone that came out of them, because Black makes everybody at this point. Sorry, y'all, but it's the truth.
It's true.
But Black, you know what I mean? You have Hispanics that came out of Black people. Like that's what that was created out of. But all of these groups, for example, you have the way Asians have suffered. That is a consequence of Black people initially and Native Americans not being considered a full human. It's like, oh, if I can't consider these people that I bought here against their will here, why am I going to consider these people coming from the outside in human? Why would I do that? Oh, they benefit me? Okay, I'm going to use them to my benefit, but that still doesn't mean I consider them fully a full human being.
Right.
You see what I mean? And I feel that there are things when you're talking about organizations who've been here for tens and however long years, I think there should also be this consideration to not just fixing things, but really seeing how we can just hit a restart button, whatever that looks like.
Yeah.
And I mean, it might sound good in theory, but not in practice. But how do we hit that reset button and say we're going to make things right? Because the way I see it, all of these amendments saying, okay, gay people are allowed to marry, women have the right to vote, Black people are no longer slaves. I mean, what was it, Mississippi or Massachusetts? They emancipated slavery like a few years ago.
Mississippi, not Massachusetts.
After Y2K, no, it wasn't Massachusetts, it was Mississippi.
It was Mississippi.
I said Massachusetts, sorry, y'all. My father is so ashamed he's a history teacher. But I said one of the two. It was Mississippi. But all to say, we're having, it's almost like we're trying to fix things. And unfortunately, when you try to fix things, there's still the brokenness under it.
Yeah. No system that we live with right now was ever intended to be for anyone other than white men.
White men, yes. And that's a harsh reality.
And remember, you had to be a straight Christian white man.
Right.
So
if you were in Germany, your hair had to look a certain way too.
You had to look a certain way. And
back in them days, they probably didn't have Kool-Aid to dye their hair to make it look a certain way.
No Kool-Aid. They had plants though. That's how they started the dyes.
Right. Oh, there we go. I heard about Kool-Aid in the Black community and I was floored. But anyway.
Yes, it's Kool-Aid.
But I mean, it's a sad reality, and I think I would also say it is also worth learning about the lived experiences of these straight Christian white men.
Yeah,
because you'll find, I imagine just living your life an entire way. I mean, we both mentioned growing up Adventists, right?
yep.
And I remember moving to South Korea, leaving my little Haitian hole in the wall church.
Yep.
Right. And I'd also gone to a Jamaican church, or predominantly Jamaican church. So being in that bubble, and then going out into the world of South Korea, where people wore short shorts to church,
right,
and jeans sometimes.
Yes.
And church was 1 hour.
Yes, that's where I am right now.
And if the sermon went over 12,
people are looking at you sideways. They're like, "Are we leaving right now?"
Sideways, they out the door. That was my church. They out the door. We ain't got time. You got an emergency, call us. We out the door.
Gotta go.
You know what I mean? And it was almost, that was, I don't want to say it was harsh, but a part of it was a lot. In the beginning,
it's a culture shock. It's a shock. It's a culture shock.
And even going into this culture, right?
It was nice.
But it made me really appreciate Korean culture. I mean, I don't take away from anybody else's experience, but I think sometimes when you travel, you have to, again, and we have that culture shock, right?
Yeah, of course.
Where you knew something your entire life, and now you're moving into this new space. And I know some Americans would come in and say, well, in America we do this, in America we do that.
But you know what, you ain't in America.
Right. So I'm with my students, I used to be like, oh, y'all eat rice every day? Guess who else eats rice every day?
That's right.
Haiti. Hello. And honestly, when I went, a lot of my students didn't know much about Haiti except for the earthquake that happened in, what was it, 2010?
Oh, really?
But then we started to bond over the similarities that both of our cultures had. Yeah. And I think that really allowed them to learn more about me. My Puerto Rican roommate, bless her heart, I remember her coming home furious. And I'm like, what happened? She was like, you will not believe what happened. I said, what you mean? So one of the Korean teachers invited her to eat dinner with his family. And they put a bowl of rice for everybody in the family and handed my roommate a croissant. You know, Puerto Ricans love them some rice too, arroz con pollo.
Yes, yes.
So my roommate took it to everybody's plate of rice, bowl of rice, and she's like, I'm sorry, is there a reason why I didn't get rice? He goes, no, you're American. You don't eat rice, Brianna. She was like, I'm sorry, absolutely not. Absolutely not. No, that is a hard no. I love rice. Meanwhile, for me, we were having, I think they called it like tea time once a term. It was like 2 months for the term, but they had tea time when the students brought in snacks and they got to ask me questions.
Yes.
And I remember one student, he's like, teacher, you know, what do you like? We know you don't like rice. I said, who doesn't like rice?
Who are you talking to?
Said, no, America, right. Americans don't ask rice. I'm like rice. And I'm like, which Americans don't? And I really discovered, that's where I discovered that I think in Europe, that's where it clicked, where it's more of a bread type of culture.
Yes.
It's not, and I could be wrong, but I was informed that Europeans, their anatomy doesn't handle rice the same way ours does, or Asians.
That's interesting.
Do. Yeah, and I could very well be wrong. This is what I was told.
Right.
So I stand corrected if I'm wrong.
Right.
Anybody tries to come and cancel me because I ain't got nobody following me anyway. Right. I get canceled before I become established. Right. But I remember the student saying, no, you don't like rice, teacher. Americans don't like rice. And I had to tell them there are so many cultures around the United States. You know, I grew up in a home that was heavily Haitian. Yes, my parents have taken me to every restaurant that was in a restaurant. We did go to Red Lobster because, you know, Red Lobster was the bomb back in the days. If you went to Red Lobster, you was making a little bit of change. You know what I mean? So, and I was one of those Adventists that knew that Red Lobster didn't only serve lobster.
That's right.
Because, you know, a few of them would not go. Red Lobster serves lobster. No, I
knew cross-eyed, like you went to where?
Right.
That's right.
So, you know, my mother, however, I grew up on the Dewey, the Sosqua, the chaka. That's my favorite. Chaka. I grew up on Liggy. I grew up on all of these different foods, Haitian foods. So for me, for example, if an American, and this is very much my culture, an American comes to me and says, I know how to cook. I'm a great cook. I'm in culinary, whatever. I say, what do you know how to cook? I can cook pasta. For me, I'm gonna be like, do you know how to cook rice?
Yes, like, you know how to cook rice?
What about like legume? Because to me, pasta is not, you know, outside of spaghetti and hot dog.
Right.
Pasta's not food. You know what I mean? Tell me you can make macaroni gratin, and then we have a conversation. You know what I mean?
Right.
But yeah, it
That's
really
hilarious.
opened up this world of having conversations with my students and saying, no, we have so much more in common than we have apart. For example, here in Korea, well, not here, in Korea, you all bow out of respect. In Haiti or in Haitian culture, you can come into a room with 100 people, 100 adults older than you.
You going to go,
every single last one of them.
You gotta go greet every one
Don't
of them.
say hi.
No.
You don't say hi. You did not greet them if you said hi. You need to go and kiss them. Kiss every single, and I mean, COVID did us a favor. No shade.
COVID saved.
Did us a small favor.
Some people.
Now you can see people, you can be like,
yes, hello, bonsoir. But you have to greet them regardless. Like you can't just walk into, there's no walking into a room and pretend nobody's there. Man, they'll kick your butt right back out that door. You better come back in here and show somebody respect.
Right. And just saying hi is not greeting me. And even and we were able again to bond on that. They're like, oh my goodness, if I come home and I don't, do the 45, 90 degree bow.
Right.
I didn't greet them. Hi. Oh my goodness, are you crazy? You see an elderly in the street or whatever, and you don't bow. Oh my goodness, it's disrespectful. Or
that's right.
Certain language, you know what I mean, using honorific language.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
In Korean language. So again, I think I really sometimes feel like the world would be such a better place if we really realize that we don't have that much different in between each other. It might look different, but we have so much in common.
We have so much in common.
Understanding that by understanding that we have so much in common, we can actually celebrate each other's differences.
And that's also the same thing, the same deal when you're talking about different religions. One religion wants to say, we're the ones, you the ones, you not the ones, you go in here, we go in there. And you look at them and really the base message is pretty much the same. Like they are saying the same things. But everybody gotta be like, oh no.
Girl, I'm so glad your Adventism has led you to say that before mine did. Because it's, I've had conversations, and in Creole culture they say ushite. I think it's hilarious. But I realized that some of my favorite people on earth are those who started religious and turned agnostic or atheist. Because when you hear their perspective, it's very, very interesting. And it's for me, it's like I believe in what I believe in, but I'm able to honor their journey.
Yeah.
And also honor that truth, right? Because what they say, a lot of it does make sense, right? I think we live in this world, as you said, where if you're different, we shut it down. It's bad. For example, voodoo. If you think about it, growing up, I know for myself, growing up in the United States, I learned about Greek mythology, the god of this, the god of that, but it's probably the same thing as the gods of our ancestors in Africa. Yes, but ours, blackness has been so vilified, right? Yes. That now we see it as evil and so on and so forth. If you speak to a Muslim person, they're gonna tell you that they believe in God just like you do.
Yep.
As a matter of fact, the same God that you believe in, except their pathway to connecting with God isn't Jesus, it's Allah.
Right.
And that's a hard truth for some people.
That's a hard truth, but so what makes yours better than mine? Why is yours better than mine? That's why I really have a problem with that. And that's why I look at voodoo and I say, no, this is a cultural thing. And I have been taught to think that it's terrible, that it is evil, but when I think about it, really, why is it evil? Because you didn't understand it. So you called it evil because you didn't understand it. And you brought the Bible to beat people over the head with it and tell people that they're supposed to be enslaved with it. and that's supposed to be okay. And I'm like, no, because you know what? In Ghana, the word for Saturday is Sabbath. It's not the word in Ghana in Tree for Saturday is Sabbath. Without them being Christian.
Wow.
Right?
See that?
And so you go, and and if you read your Bible, if you had ever picked it up and read it, you would see that in the letter to the Corinthians, here you got me preaching, the letter to the Corinthians, that
you about to open your Bible. Let me go get my
that it says that people will know God. Even if they never meet someone who is Christian, they will know God because it will be in their hearts. So the idea that I have to beat you over the head, that you have to be what I say you have to be, is
and it has to look like the way I say it.
And it has to look the way I say it's gonna look, and we have to do it the way that I say we have to do it, makes no sense.
None. I think when you think of belief, right, and you think of faith, the reality is you have faith in something you've never seen, you haven't met, right? And honestly, we're never gonna know until we know. And so you have to make that choice to say, hey, I know I'm not gonna know, but this is what I believe in, and this is how I believe in it. And how much you want to bet? You know, we can all get to heaven, as Christians say. Hey, you're gonna find you some Buddhists, some Muslims, you find the voodoo people up there, you find everybody up there, and everybody looking around like, what are you doing here? And someone even gave me this perspective, right? Saying that, you know, in some of these religions where polytheistic religions, the same way we have Jesus or Muhammad and so on and so forth, that connect us to God, that's how the gods connect them to the highest power, God, if that makes sense. You know, you have people who worship the universe. To them, Mother Earth or the and I'm speaking out of my ignorance, so I stand corrected, but that's God to them, right? So you have different religions who believe in God or a God. How they view that God, how they perceive that God, it's all different. And that's why there's religion and there's spirituality, right? The spirituality has everything to do with your spirit, your soul, and that connection you have, right? Versus religion,
which is man-made.
It's man-made, it's man-established, you know, and yes, it might be based on a Quran, it might be based on a Torah, it might be based on a Bible, it might be based on the Constitution. I don't know. It could be based on whatever you want it to be on, okay? It could be based on writings you thought you saw in the grass, okay? It's based on whatever you want to base it on. What happens is you have these people who come together and they say, this is our interpretation, whether we want to admit it or not. It's based on interpretation, your interpretation, and this is how we're going to live it out. I've had this, you know, I can speak from my Seventh-day Adventism. You know, you have, again, growing up in the Haitian church, they told me my color was trash. They told me, you know, they, of course, preached the earring thing. They've said things about, like, you can't go on the pulpit when you're on your period. There's so many things that they say. And then I went to Korea, and people out here in these streets in jeans, I pull up with a new wig, and they're like, oh, hey, we love the hair, you know? And so you realize that there's a collective group of people who are saying, okay, this is what we're going to establish in our quarters. It doesn't mean that you're wrong. This is what you accept as truth, and that's okay. But you have to also understand that what your truth looks like is not what somebody else's truth looks like. And that doesn't have to take away from your belief. I know for myself, I've been told, oh, there are certain books or certain things certain types of studies you don't want to take on because it'll cause you to lose faith. Well, if I lose faith, so be it, because that means I didn't have faith to begin with. I believe everyone should have something to believe in. And if you believe in the tree, you believe in a phone, whatever you believe in, it is what it is. That doesn't make it evil. And I mean, even going back to the conversation about voodoo, right, where they always make it seem like it's evil. And I remember growing up, they used to sit us in the church, and, you know, they used to show people who were breaking out in praise breaks and so on and so forth. And they would be like, oh, well, it came from voodoo and so on and so forth. Yeah, and that could make sense. But if I'm a white person breaking out in a praise break, I ain't got nothing to do with no voodoo. You know what I mean? Like, where did it's not even part of my lineage if I'm white and I'm breaking out in a praise break. But, you know, and we go through this process of vilifying it so much. And
here's the difference too, though. If you're white and you're breaking out in the praise break, doing all of that, then oh, you got the Holy Ghost. That's good. But if someone is doing voodoo and they're breaking out in the praise break, all of a sudden it's like, oh shit, the devil's got them. We got to, banish the devil.
They're demon possessed.
Why?
Yeah, and it's why. And my thing is, I think, and I say this, voodoo was used to get our independence, and I see that as a very good thing. If I had the choice, and they looked at me and say, Juliette, what I should do when we went back to 1804, I'd be like, do that again. Let me see how you
do what you did.
Like, you know when a kid gets in a fight and they come home and their parents see and they're like, matter of fact, I want to see how you did it. You know what I mean? And that is unhealthy. But we coming back from this generation. Okay, Gen X, Gen Y, we were raised differently. But, for me, I believe that voodoo can be used for good. In the same way that a lot of people do use it for bad. There are people when they're sick, what do? They take them to a voodoo priest for healing. The same way when I'm sick, my parents might call on the prayer circle, to fast and to pray. If you're Muslim, they might take you to a mosque. If you're Jewish, everybody has
the blood that has been shed for over the years has been shed because of religion. So if we're gonna say that, that voodoo can be used for good and bad, all religion can be used for good.
Every religion.
You can use your religion. You can use your religion to say that person over there needs to die because they don't believe as we do.
Yes.
And there you go.
I mean, look at Christianity. And that's another thing that frustrates me. We vilify Islam, right?
Yes.
Islam. It's a terrorist, whatever. No. There are people who are radical and in the name of Islam found a way to justify this horrible behavior in the same sense. And again, this is not to take away from anyone's pain, anyone's lived experience. But yes, September 11th was one of the deadliest tragedies, right? Terrorist attacks. But you know which one was all the more worse? Slavery. And they used Christianity to enslave folks.
That's right. To keep it going.
Day, Christianity is being used against immigrants. Christianity is being used against people of color. Christianity is being used against white people, white women. And I wouldn't be surprised if white men were using it against each other too. So, you know what I mean? There's always going to be your radicals. In the Bible, we have Jewish people who asked for Jesus to be crucified. Everyone's going, there are people who are on the extremes, your outliers, who are going to use their religion to do evil. That doesn't mean the religion in theory or as a whole is evil.
Right.
If you expect us to say not all cops are bad, you need to understand that not everybody who practices voodoo or Islam or whatever religion is bad.
Right.
Shade, but no shade.
Look. Whoo, girl.
So y'all don't try to cancel me because I'm not established. I'm gonna tell you that much. I got no money for y'all to cancel. And ain't nothing y'all trying to cancel. I don't even have followers on Instagram like that.
You're good.
If you want to cancel somebody else.
And that's the thing. It's like when you say something that is based in reality and based in fact, it's up to people to decide whether they want to take it or not. We're not saying that people are innately bad, but what happens is that Black people or people of color are seen as innately flawed. And what we're trying to say is, no, it's just different. We all have a certain level of humanity that needs to be seen and understood before you pass all those kinds of judgments on anybody. Right. And so that's really the crux of what we're saying,
Right. And I mean, even going back to what you're saying, I know we mentioned like white people and that's another thing. When I've heard stories like people in Nazi Germany, soldiers who really, it's kind of like you're hesitating and you don't know that this is right, but you receive orders. people in the military, you know, some of them will tell you, you know, you ask them, how do you feel that so and so is president or whatever, and they're like, that's my boss, I just follow orders. They have no opinion. They have that they don't even process the ethics or the morals or their moral compass, you know. And I think even when it comes to, as we said, someone who knew something their entire life, right? All you grew up as a kid, you grow up and your parents took you to see the lynching in town or whatever. It becomes, it's almost like a harsh culture shock. And I hate to say it that way, but it's a culture shock when you're like, oh my goodness, these people shouldn't be, this isn't right. And it's unlearning that you have to do, you know. And there's an indoctrination that goes into justifying that.
Absolutely.
The same way, you know, the Bible, you know, people can say it's very patriarchal. And while there's some good things that happen there, it's some wild stuff that goes on in the Bible.
Yeah, it is.
You know, people dying, fire, and brimstone, all this craziness going on. You know, and people use those stories, unfortunately, to justify holding migrants, putting kids in cages, holding migrants at the border, you know, putting people in concentration camps. Whatever it is, they justify that. But we also, as human beings, have to understand, as a human being, there's a process to having to unlearn that. The same way we have to unlearn a lot of these unhealthy practices and behaviors that we've taken as part of our generational trauma. You know, spanking kids, for example. I know at a point I was like, I know I'm gonna have to spank my kid once. Why? I don't know, but I'm gonna have to do it. You know,
you don't really.
And I think about
let me tell you,
oh my goodness, that is so unhealthy. You know, because in my head I'm like, that's just what I was raised knowing. But
that's one of the generational curses that needs to be broken. That there's no need
broken and unlearned, right?
There's no need to necessarily spank a child, but you know, you discipline a child in different ways. It doesn't have to be spanking, because what was done
and
is that
use logic.
Enslaved people were beaten into submission, and so that's where that comes from. And do we want to continue that? I don't think we do. And so we have
and they're beaten into submission, not even understanding they're in a foreign land. As adults, you're in a foreign place. You don't know where you are. You don't understand what they're telling you. They're trying to change your name to whatever it is, right? And you're refusing because you really don't know. Even if they said, here's this medicine, it's good for you, you don't want it because you don't know. You can't understand. So imagine a baby that some of them can't speak, can't defend themselves. They can't communicate how they're feeling, or they're still struggling to understand how to communicate. And what we do, we hit them.
Right.
So it's a lot of unlearning on both ends.
Absolutely. But we know this. We just trying to get everybody to know this. We're just trying to get everybody to get on board with the understanding that we all have shit that we need to unpack. So everybody start unpacking so that we can get through it.
Hurry up. Get your suitcase. All right. Because you know how they say you go on vacation? Well, you know how they say you go on vacation and it takes 2 to 3 business weeks, not days, business weeks.
Right.
Because your suitcase stays by the door.
Right.
And they've even said, like, if you do it within like 2 to 3 business days, you're not normal. Right. And low-key, I do it within a few business days. But there was a point where, like, we would come from vacation and the next annual vacation would come and my suitcase is still downstairs. I've been living out of it. I've been doing laundry, putting clothes back in it, all of that. But listen, we need to unpack.
It's time to
unpack that suitcase.
Unpack it.
Unlearn. Let's have these conversations. Be willing to listen to other people's lived experiences. I think it's
understand that the lived experiences are not they're not talking to you as a person. They're talking to experiences that they have experienced and how they've experienced it and the impact and what it does. And that's what people have to understand. The experiences are not attacking you. They are just what is.
It's just a reality. And some realities are harder to hear than others. They're very hard to hear. And you have to be, there's actually a video, and I don't know if I mentioned this on our last recording, but wasn't a recording. But there's and I think it's called White People. It's on YouTube. And it was basically, I believe they're a Filipino immigrant who went into white communities and really wanted to understand what being white was to white people. And you sit and you listen to them, some of them saying, you know, they understand that they have a certain level of privilege, there's certain access that they have. And then you have some of them who are like, okay, they have all of these, for example, scholarships and opportunities that are catered to certain marginalized groups, but it's unfair because they don't have access to those things, right? So from their experience, when you look at it through their vantage point, and if you really put yourself in their shoes, right? If, for example, my parents are still married, you know, I grew up in a 2-parent home. Let's say there was an opportunity and they say, you know what, we're going to prioritize kids in 1-parent homes, single-parent homes. And I'm trying to apply and I feel like I'm not getting the opportunity.
Right.
But what if I just didn't realize that only maybe a small percentage of kids in 1-parent homes get that opportunity because of the challenges that come with being a single parent. And back to that video, it was some of them who said, like, I don't get these opportunities. I don't get them. And then when they had to listen to the statistics of, yo, they create these opportunities for us, but we still not getting them, right? They create these scholarships, but we're not becoming the majority. We're still a small minority that are having access to these scholarships and these resources and so on and so forth. But it also takes hearing their vantage point and acknowledging that, yes, you're right. If I were in your shoes of privilege, I probably would be frustrated too. You know, it even, which was interesting, it even walked through the shoes of a white teacher living in a Native American town, teaching Native American students. And they also had to speak on their lived experience, right? Where you come from a world where you are the privileged person, and now you go to a smaller world where you are not necessarily privileged or disprivileged, but you're in the minority.
Yeah.
You're not the majority. And them having to hear the reality of, you know, what their ancestors did, you know, the names that students might refer to them as that are technically derogatory, but they can't say nothing because it's the reality of what their ancestors have done.
Yeah.
And so all to say, when we're able to kind of hear out each other's lived experiences, and for some, you know, being kind to yourself can also include, listen, I'm not in the headspace to hear this right now, and be okay with it.
Yeah.
And you know, step back until you're ready. But for those who say I am ready, understand that you do need to also be open, whether you're on the side of the privileged or disprivileged, be willing to understand and be understood.
That's right. Be willing to understand and then be understood. And that's the basis of communication.
Absolutely.
Ooh, girl, we gotta have a conversation today.
For sure. And the fact that we are 2 New Yorkers, oh my goodness. This is wild. You on the other side of the Tappan Zee and the GW Bridge? Wow.
Yes.
Y'all judges hard. That's the diversity, equity, and inclusion that I'm gonna start fighting for. Y'all need to stop excluding us because we're like right there.
I don't do that anymore because I don't live there. I live out in the real boondocks. Okay. So
but my parents live in the boondocks of New York.
Now they do.
So I mean, yeah. And that's just a different world. That's even worse because then I have friends from the city who would like drive up for a barbecue at my house and they're like, why are there so many bears and deer? This is a problem.
Like,
this is a problem.
Are they joining us for this barbecue?
Right. Like, we have a problem with this.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for being here with me, Juliette. It has been such a pleasure.
Thank you.
I am so glad that we were able to salvage our interview. But before I let you go, I have to ask you, and I think you mentioned it in our conversation, but I have to ask you, what is your favorite dish?
Chaka.
You did.
Chaka. It's a Haitian dish, and it's made with, I actually looked up the recipe, squash, beans, dried corn. I think. I've never cooked it. I think it tastes better when my mother and my godmother and my aunt cooks it. So I kind of like refuse. But it is my absolute favorite dish. I've loved it since I was a kid. And I realized I have this love for patties and fried dumplings.
Oh.
Those are my favorites. Haitian patties and fried dumplings. I don't know why. And they're just so unhealthy.
You don't have to know why. You just gotta
fried dumplings?
It speaks to your soul. It's okay.
But those are my favorite dishes.
Thank you, my sister, for being here. Thank you for spending time with me, and thank you for
having me on this award-winning podcast. Did we say award-winning?
We did.
I just want y'all to hear that real quick. Award-winning. That's what I'm gonna start telling you. I've been on an award-winning podcast. You can't talk to me any type of way. Don't come out.
There you go. Thank you.
That's gonna go on my resume. Award-winning podcast.
Hey, did you enjoy that episode? If so, please leave a review. It would mean the world, but only if it's a good one and you really did enjoy it. In which case, it would be awesome if you help support my work over at patreon.com/Sedruola Maruska. And finally, before you go, don't forget diversitydish.com. I'd love to work with you. See you soon.